Goeiedag, Luc Sala voor Kleurnet. En we zijn nog steeds bezig met onze millennium discussies. Met discussies over de aard van de natuur, de aard van onze waarneming en hoe dat allemaal in elkaar past. Een van de belangrijke dingen daarbij is de kwantummechanica. Een uitvinding eigenlijk gedaan aan het begin van deze eeuw. En dat was een revolutie. Einstein was de man die de relativiteitstheorie ontwikkelde. Schrödinger. Dat soort mensen hebben, Heisenberg, hebben in diezelfde tijd het wezen van de schepping, het wezen van de materie eigenlijk aan het wankelen gebracht. Ze hebben gezegd, wat we zien is ofwel licht, oftewel een golf, oftewel een deeltje. Maar als we er naar kijken alsof het een deeltje is, kunnen we niet kijken alsof het licht is. Kortom, er werd een waarschijnlijkheid geïntroduceerd over als we naar dingen kijken. De belangrijkste les was eigenlijk dat de kijker, degene die ergens naar kijkt, en het object een relatie met elkaar hebben. Dat we de pure wetenschap, de wetenschappelijke methode die zegt de experimentator staat los van het geëxperimenteerde, dat we dat moesten verlaten. We gaan daarover praten met Nick Herbert. Hij heeft een boek geschreven, onder andere een boek geschreven dat heet Quantum Physics. Nick, welcome. You have written a book called Quantum Physics, but you have written quite a few books, huh?
Quantum reality is the
Quantum reality.
It's not just physics, it's about reality, what really is. So that was my first book. And then I wrote a pop book called Faster Than Light on how to build time machines and such. In fact, in Japan it was even translated as how to build time machine. And it's a bestseller there under that title. It's doing pretty well here. So that's the Faster Than Light. And then Elemental Mind, about what we know about consciousness.
So your work has been on this crossroads of physics and consciousness.
Yeah, I think
on something that all philosophers really worked in. When you say reality is that's what we perceive and what is there. I was just explaining that
philosophy is too important to be left to the philosophers. I think it's about time we scientists got our dirty little hands on it. You know, science is pretty powerful, and I think we can reach down to the structure of reality and grapple with it in a way that philosophers are not able to.
Now, I'm a physicist, you understand?
Yes, I understand.
We've got tools, and when I started to study, which was the end of the 60s, we were just coming to grips with Einstein and atomic power and nuclear power. And then there was this thing in the background called quantum physics. And it made me nervous. I never understood it. Now,
neither did I.
Wait a moment, you wrote a book about it.
But the reason I wrote the book was so I could understand quantum physics. I said, I don't understand quantum physics, although I know all the math. So what does quantum physics say about the world? What Newtonian physics said the world was just particles moving around under the influence of fields. And that made sense. Quantum physics said, forget about reality. I can give you these equations that will describe what you see. Here are these equations. They describe what you see. But what's really there? What's really there? Oh, don't ask questions like that. We have these equations that will tell you what you will see.
Yeah, but these equations, like Schrödinger and Heisenberg,
yes,
Jesus, there were very complicated mathematical things that basically said, well, it's not sure what you see or what you will sure.
Right,
That's what it said. Very complex way of saying, we don't know yet.
But the biggest difference was the way it treated observation. In the Newtonian world, no matter whether you were looking or not, the world was always there and always the same. It was always particles and waves whether you looked or not. Now, in the new quantum way of describing things, if you take the theory seriously, the mathematics seriously, just say that it's a picture of reality rather than just a way of predicting. It says that when you don't look at the world, when the world's not being looked at, it's waves of possibilities. It's not even there. It's just possibilities and promises. And then when you make an observation, one of these promises becomes real. So a world made only of promises, and wavy ones at that, when you don't look. And then when you look, particles of actuality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. I mean,
but it's the same crazy question. There was this philosopher that says, take a wood with trees, yes?
Yes.
Now, if nobody looks, is that tree there? You know, in the middle of the wood is a tree. Is it there or isn't it there?
In the Newtonian world, we would say yes. That tree was always there, whether people look or not. Now, the quantum world, that tree in the forest. I wonder how long that's been in philosophy classes to sort of mind fuck poor students. You know, the poor student comes from the farm and then they give him this one. You know.
If there's nobody to look at it, is it there?
Is it there or not? You know, that used to be a way to mind fuck little sophomores. But now quantum mechanics makes us take that seriously. It's somehow that very question. That stupid thing at philosophy class has now become a real solid question that might be answered by physics. At least it's at the heart of the new physics.
Yeah, they call this the new physics, the physics of non-locality, the Bell's theorem, and these are all a complex words. For me, it comes down to this: we used to think that if something happened there and I looked at it, it was separate from me.
Yes.
And now the new physics says, hey, wait a moment. At the moment you look at things, you especially if it's on a very small, tiny level, that's what we call the quantum level.
Yes.
You can't say what's happening, but you are part of what's happening.
You are part of what's happening.
So the whole scientific method of doing research falls away.
Well, but only in these quantum areas. I mean, in the area of whether there's a table here or microphones or you know, the Newtonian approximation is pretty good. I mean, if I turn my back, I can still believe that there's a Luc Sala there in this big world.
Yeah.
But in the smaller world, you can't. I mean, when you turn your back, the world turns into possibilities, and it just...
Yeah, but normal physics don't apply anymore. And you were talking about time travel, yes?
But only at the very small level. Normal physics applies at the large level. And one of the mysteries of quantum philosophy is, where is the boundary between the small and the large? If little particles fade into wave-like things when I don't look, but Luc Sala doesn't, somewhere in between there must be a transition from the fuzzy quantum world, and no one has been able to find that transition, where that
happens. But it does happen. Now, let's take a level we're all familiar with.
Well,
take computers.
Just a second. One way of dividing the line is to say my consciousness is where the quantum world starts. That means that all of this is in the quantum world. Everything, not just everything small, but
because
everything large.
I'm part of it.
And only at your consciousness does these things become real. This gets like Buddhist philosophy, that there is no world out there.
It's all Maya, all illusion.
It's all experience. Just experience.
Hey, listen,
no solid
Nick.
world. Yes?
This happened, they figured this out in 1908 or 1906, yes? At the early beginning of this century. We are nearly a century later. And we haven't come to grips with it. We have done some experiments to prove that the quantum mechanics work.
All the experiments work.
But in normal life, that what Nick Franks does is still considered magic, yeah, or weirdness.
Hey, look. We still have high standards in science, you know, and things like radionics and homeopathy have to pass the
test of reproducibility.
Yes, they do. We have, and apparently they haven't. I mean, according to what I've heard.
There is some proof.
But homeopathic, all these techniques are so individual. They're a little bit like a science of unique events.
Yeah, but so if there's a science of unique events, and that seemingly is the case because people do experiments about bending this or doing that or predicting, and sometimes they hit the mark, you know?
Yes,
they
sometimes
turn out.
do.
Sometimes an astrologist will say, yes, I predicted this, and it comes out.
And not only that, but there's this feeling that flows between you and the astrologer, for instance, that gives it all that significance, some kind of telepathy almost.
Yeah.
When they're really good predictors, you know, they engage you on an emotional level too, in a kind of magic way.
Yeah, but is there a physical explanation? Then we come to Rupert Sheldrake, who says this morphogenetic field, and he has all kinds of experiments that prove that, in fact, because that's the basic thing. I'm here, there's the subject of the object, I look at it and I have a relationship with it. Now, one of his experiments was that if I look at your back and I look at you, and you count whether I'm looking at it, telling that you seemingly feel whether I'm looking at you. So there's some kind of field. So it's statistically proven that that's correct. Only science, normal science, says, hey, that's important. The light from the light bulb goes to you, or to the back first, and then to you. It's not you looking at it and radiating something. But seemingly, that is what happens. I'm doing something when I look. And that's the same as what before Walter van Oel, who's a painter, says, yeah, wait a moment. Well, I even go further. I put something onto the painting, and it does something to you through time. You're really talking to my soul when you look at my painting. Wow. Man, they burned people at the stakes for that.
Now, suppose this. Suppose only one person looked at Walter's paintings, just one person. And now maybe 400 people look at his paintings. Does he feel it greater 400 times? Or is it only 3 times greater when the people
That is interesting, isn't it?
Well, as a performer, and you probably are aware of the power of attention.
Yes.
When people pay attention to you, it really does something to you, on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
And now imagine 2 people, or 3 people, or 4 people, live people, paying attention to you. Now you really begin to feel good. Now, does it work through television? I mean, that.
Come in, guys.
Well, what do you think? I mean, when you're on television,
well,
you get a
I know.
real hit?
I can only tell you my experience. When I
Okay.
go to paintings by Van Gogh, and very funny, like in the MoMA Museum in New York, there hangs this Starry Nights. And at one time I was there, and I approached the painting. I was walking towards it, and there was one range between 9 and 11 feet from the painting where it was really, I had to cry. It was like, wow. And then I moved closer and it didn't work. And so this guy came to me and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm finding out that there is a range. Of course, I came to the conclusion that was the distance it was that he painted it for. That every time he was painting, he would go to that distance and say, yeah, this is what I see, whatever, out of my window, whatever he saw, this starry night. So I came to the conclusion that there was a strong force. But I also felt that the fact that the painting has been looked and admired by so many people would give it power.
Yes.
So in fact, that there was a secret or sacred force around it.
Let's look at that. Can you imagine? So a painting is kind of a substance that absorbs people's attention and then retransmits it.
Yes.
So the amount of people that look at this painting sort of push stuff into it.
Yeah.
And then other people can extract that.
Yeah. So, but we can measure it. That we agree. I mean,
wait, I don't know. Wait, we don't agree that we can measure this.
I can measure it. I can feel it.
Well, we're talking about doing statistical things.
Yeah, I know, but I don't
where you
count.
take hundreds of people and have them look at this patch of.
Yeah, but the fact is,
hey, tell you what, Luke. Here's an experiment. We take 2 identical pieces of art. Maybe they could just be a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And we hide one in a warehouse. And they're identical, these pieces of art.
And we have 50 million people look
at the other one.
Okay.
Okay, now you bring them out and you exhibit them in an art, and then you have critics trying. I mean, they're exactly alike, and you have art critics come
and
in.
I'm sure one looks better.
You're sure?
Better. Yes. No, and the proof is
they're
here.
identical. They're identical.
No.
They're physically identical.
Except that more people looked at it.
That's right. Now, do you think art critics have in their soul that they?
Yeah, they do.
They do?
Yes. But now
bet.
We bet. Now I'll give you the proof of that, and it is if you go to Tibet or to any place where they have this little. You see, in the West we have computers at home, and we tell each other how powerful they are. You know? Oh man, I have a 550 megahertz, and he has a 700.
It's the latest.
And we made them little goddesses.
Hey, Luke.
We never used them, but mine is more powerful.
I have a 20 megahertz machine.
Good. It still does the job.
It's about this
CPM?
No, it's a Mac.
Oh, it's a Mac. But you used to have a Tandy.
I used to use Radio Shack.
A TRS 80.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm covered in shame.
When I first met him, he was. But now, so we have that, and we
do have that. It's a big macho thing.
And we attribute power. Now, if you go to the
Tibet,
east,
what's their equivalent?
They have
power?
a similar thing. Well, they have a Buddha there. Every house is a little temple place, or a Buddha, or even a Tanka.
But what's the scale of competition?
And they do the same thing. They say, my Buddha is stronger than yours.
But it's just psychically stronger, huh?
Well, yeah, but hey, that's what they believe in.
Excuse me, I shouldn't use the word just. It's psychically stronger.
It's psychically stronger, and it means for them that they get better crops, or the children get less ill, whatever. They feel it. And actually, we have here a Buddha that's out there. It comes from the Cosmos place, and it has been standing there, and it is one of those things that many people, including the Dalai Lama and Sogyal Rinpoche and everybody around us.
This Buddha has that power. Has that energy?
Because it was in the Cosmos from, I think, the mid 60s, and I bought it when the Cosmos went bankrupt.
What is the Cosmos?
The Cosmos was a place in Amsterdam, like an excellence center. Mm-hmm. And I know that thing has acquired power. But you have the same thing. You might have 2 Buddhas somewhere out in Tibet or all those places, Thailand, and people will tell you, it's not how it looks. It's the fact, the veneration, the venerable. Yes? And that this one, the jade Buddha or the emerald Buddha, is because it has always been It had some initial power.
Okay, so along with art objects and religious objects have this same ability to suck in attention and then project it back out.
Yes. They're mirrors through time.
This is your assertion.
Yes, and now I come to your point.
Yes.
I know you have some theory or some ideas that you can do time travel on a very small scale. Yes. Now, first we have to know that the Bell theorem says that we can do things faster, basically communicate faster than light, instantaneous between two things, and that's been proven, I think, at some level.
Only at the level of reality, not at the level of appearance.
Appearance, okay, but there is some scientific work on the Bell theorem that said if you take something that is, let's say that's two halves, but you don't know which half you have, you take them in a closed cage, two halves, then the funny thing is that at the moment you open this cage and you know it's like the right half, then you know that there is the left half by logic.
Yes.
And it's like transmitting a message
instantaneously.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one of the new physics wonders, paradoxes.
Yeah, except it's all under the table. The most interesting thing to me about Bell's theorem is that it says something about reality, not about appearance. You know, Kant made the distinction between reality and appearance. Appearance is just what appears, what we see, Luc Sala in the studio and such. And reality is the secret underpinnings of this. And Kant said we could never know anything about those secret underpinnings because we have our particular goggles. There were all sorts of philosophers that you can't know reality. Physicists have found something to say about reality. I mean, as I say, philosophy is just too important to be that
we won't leave them to the guys with the books. We want
we will with the guys with the hooks. That's what we should. Scientists should be doing philosophy. It should be put in our capable hands. You know, after all, we have atomic weapons, nerve gas. We can probably handle the mind-body problem and
yet nobody touches it.
Well, it's never been tried this way. You know,
but
with
there was
electronics and computers.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what we discovered in our journey down to the underworld. It's called non-locality. This world is completely local. This one here, if I do something here, it takes at least the speed of light, even with your transmitters, to get somewhere else. And that's always true. Everything in this whole world is local. Move here takes years, light years. But the underworld
is susceptible to place and time constraint.
Yes. The underworld is not. The underworld, if something happens down here, it can instantly be felt everywhere in the underworld. Now, that's
Isn't that what these Buddhists say happened with
their
Buddha?
They just say it. We prove it.
Well, they believe it.
Well, sure. Actually, I don't even believe it, but there's a proof of it. It's so hard for me to believe that because there's no evidence for it on the upper world.
Mm-hmm. But still, you have written a book about time travel. You have told me that in theory and maybe even in practice, it's possible to send one bit back in time.
If we could get into this underworld and travel, we could go anywhere in space and time.
There's no limitations.
Yeah, this would be bigger than the internet.
But people have always been in the underworld, and they were called mages or mystics or idiots, or we burn them, or yes.
Yeah, that's probably going to come back.
Or Jesus Christ was one.
It's probably going to come back, or they're going to start having scientists now instead of.
And that's also the story of your life, because you started as a scientist. Yes,
I still am a scientist.
Are you a scientist? But now you're a part poet, part researcher into consciousness. You use psychedelics to
look. Science is ruthless. You know, we'll study anything. And we've already explained the physical world. So let's get into these other areas like the mind-body problem and consciousness. I think So, of course, I write poetry and take drugs. You know, if I was a scientist studying consciousness and I didn't take drugs, I wouldn't be.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
So I'm a scientist, Luke. I'm not a spaced-out hippie.
Well, I'm not a scientist. I'm
you were a scientist.
I'm a scientist. I have a degree in physics, and I do take drugs, and I do write poetry, and so we have this in common. This.
But I still consider myself a scientist, and you don't.
Well, I consider myself a change agent, which is different.
Yeah.
I really don't care about the nature of reality.
What?
I don't care.
Okay.
I think we can form it any way we want, and we haven't found yet. But if it's true what you say, that the underworld really doesn't conform to those laws of time and form and stuff.
It doesn't.
So if we dive into it and become one with it, and that's what the eternal mystic will say. He will say, if you become one with the all, which is basically you start maneuvering in the inner world.
Mystics don't have any hardware. It's all.
Do we need hardware in the world?
Well, physics is all about hardware. We want to invent some devices that will connect us to the underworld. You know, like Sony Walkman. This would be Void Man. You just
but
set this on,
we
go
did
into
that.
the void.
LSD
no, those are just Stone Age instruments. You know, that's drugs at the Stone Age of consciousness research. We want things like hi-fis and stuff like that, not just wooden flutes. We want CDs.
We want quality entering, not
Yes, that's right. Not unpredictable, this chemical stuff, you know. It's really unpredictable. Set and setting and all that. We want just big knobs.